This is a video tutorial for SP6c Electrons and Orbits. Now, from the last tutorial lesson on CP6A inside the atom and atomic models, you should recognize these two atomic models. First was the plum pudding model, where you had this positive material with these electrons, negatively charged electrons, in the middle. Now, the second model was the Rutherford or the nuclear model, where you had the protons and neutrons in the nucleus in the middle, mostly then empty space, and the electrons orbiting around the outside. And we said that the atom was about 99.9% empty space. Now, the third model that you need to know about is the Bohr model. So Bohr came along and amended Rutherford's model, still had the nucleus, still had the protons and neutrons in the middle, still had electrons around the outside orbiting, but now those electrons could orbit in different energy levels or different shells. And the electrons can only be found in these very, very specific shells. So you can have electrons here, you can have electrons here, you can have electrons here, but you can't have electrons in between these shells. The electrons must be on these shells. So similarities and differences between the nuclear model, Rutherford's model, and Bohr's model. Well, the similarities, both models have a nucleus. Both models have electrons orbiting the nucleus. However, in the Bohr model, those electrons are able to orbit at different distances away from the nucleus, whereas in Rutherford's model, the electrons were fixed in one particular orbit distance. This is a diagram of the element neon. Now, the electrons, once again, can only be in these particular shells. You can only have a certain number of electrons in each shell. The first shell, the innermost shell, can only have 2 electrons, and then every shell after that can have 8. Because there's 10 total electrons here, the first 2 fit in the first shell, and then the next 8 take up the next shell. And you'll learn more about this in your chemistry GCSE. Now, each shell is a different energy level. So the electrons here have a different amount of energy to the electrons here, and will have a different amount of energy to electrons if they were here, and once again here. Now, electrons right near the nucleus, right in the center, have very little energy. They're the lowest possible energy the electrons can have in this atom. Now, if the electrons were up here, in the most furthest away nucleus, they would have a lot of energy. And the further an electron is from the center of the nucleus, the more energy it has got. Now, when we give these electrons some energy, either via electricity or via electromagnetic waves that you learnt about in CP4, they will move up to a higher orbit. So here we have an electron here. The EM wave has come in, it's been absorbed by this electron, and it's moved the electron up to a higher orbit. Now, from CP3, we looked at conservation of energy. And this tells us that if this energy from the EM wave has disappeared and it's gone into the electron, that electron must now have higher energy itself. However, this is unstable. The electron doesn't like to have all of that energy. So what will happen when the electron jumps back down, it loses that energy, and that energy is given off as a particular wavelength of EM radiation. So EM radiation comes in, or electricity comes in, causes this electron to jump up to a higher energy level, and then when it drops back down, it releases that energy again in the form of an EM wave at one particular wavelength. Now, when you pass electricity through things like neon lights, they glow. And what's happening there is the electricity is causing these electrons to jump to a higher energy level, and when they fall back down, they emit light, as we've just seen. However, they can fall down many different transitions, or jump down. So they could go from the top energy level to any of the ones below it. They could, if they went to the third energy level, drop to the second or the first, and so on. And the colour that we see is a combination of all of these different transitions. So neon lights, they glow red because most of the transitions that neon can do are in the red. And if you combine the extra ones, you end up with this sort of red light. And here we have a load of different chemical elements or compounds, and these are all glowing at different colours. And this is a combination of all their different electron transitions. So this one here, it'll have a majority of its transitions in the green, therefore this is going to glow green, whereas ones on the end here, then most of their transitions are in the purple. Here's a question for you to try. Explain why neon can emit visible light with lots of different wavelengths. Use a diagram to help you. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, and here is the answer. So, for your diagram, you should have drawn something like this that we saw a couple slides ago. Electrons are able to make any of these transitions, and each of these transitions is going to emit a particular wavelength of light. It's only when you combine them all together that you see one colour. So there are a lot of jumps between orbits that electrons can make. Each jump is a different energy and emits a different wavelength of light. So for example, this one here might produce, say, blue light. This one here might produce red light. So next we want to look at ionization. What is the difference between an atom and an ion? Well, over here we've got an atom. So it's got 3 electrons around the outside orbiting the nucleus. And inside the nucleus, you're going to have 3 protons. The overall charge of this atom is 0. And the overall charge on any atom is always 0. Now over here, we have an ion. Now in this ion, 1 electron has left the atom. Okay, we'll look at how this happens in a later topic. But this electron has left the atom, and because there are now more protons than electrons, the overall atom now has a positive charge, and this is what we call an ion. Ions are formed when an atom gains or loses an electron. So an ion is an atom that has either gained or lost an electron, as I just said. Now radiation can cause an electron to break free from the atom. And so we'll look at this in a later topic. But these types of radiation are called ionizing radiation because they form ions. That's why they're called ionizing. So if an atom loses an electron, it loses a negative charge, which means the atom now becomes positively charged, as there are more positive charges than there are negative. So if sodium, which has an atomic number of 11, loses an electron, how many protons and electrons are in a sodium atom and a sodium ion? Pause the video and see if you can have a go now. Okay, hopefully you should have got that in a sodium atom, there are going to be 11 protons because that's its atomic number. And because it's an atom, it means it has no charge or it's neutrally charged, so it must also have 11 electrons. So a sodium atom is going to have 11 protons and 11 electrons. However, in an ion, well, it's still going to have 11 protons, still sodium, so it's still going to have 11 protons. However, now it's going to have 10 electrons. So it's going to have 1 more proton than electrons. Now up here you see what's called emission and absorption spectra. So when you pass light through a particular material or a particular gas, it's going to absorb wavelengths of light that match any of its electron transitions. So you can see all of the different possible transitions here for a particular gas. Now obviously when those electrons then drop back down, they're going to emit light at the same wavelength. And this is what we call the emission spectra. So the wavelengths of light that atoms will absorb is the same as those that they will emit. And this is very, very particular for particular elements and gases and compounds. So every element or compound will have its own emission and absorption spectra. So you can tell what an element or a compound is by these spectra. So here's just to finish, an exam style question for you to have a go at. I want you to draw a labelled diagram to describe the Bohr model and then describe how an atom can become a positive ion. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, so hopefully you should have drawn a diagram like this. The nucleus in the middle, you could have drawn the protons and the neutrons, although you can just label it as nucleus. And around the outside, these different energy shells with electrons on them. So you have the inner shell and then outer shells. Not all the shells have to be full or even have an electron. These are just the possible positions that electrons can be in. And then to describe how an atom can become a positive ion, well, it's when one of these outer shell electrons absorbs enough energy to leave the atom, therefore the atom is now left with a positive charge. Hope that helps. That was a video tutorial for SP6c Electrons and Orbits.